Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this week. My name is Tanya, and I'm the Marketing Manager over here at Struxoft Solutions. For those of you who are new with us today, MWF, or Metalwood Framer, is our automated Revit wall, floor, ceiling, and truss framing software for light gauge steel, and also wood modeling. ONYX, our newest product, is a cloud-based solution that allows the user to create and manipulate all aspects of the production data from outside the Revit environment. So today will be part one of a series of webinars on ONYX. Today, Christina, our senior technician, will be walking you through the basics of ONYX, including project setup, creating your account, adding users, the ONYX Upload Center, Revit toolbar, and more. Just before we get going, I'd like to remind everyone that at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking a few live questions. In order to be selected, please press the raise hand button, which you can find on the dashboard. Just please also make sure that your mic is working correctly. If you'd prefer, you can also ask questions throughout the webinar in the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll make sure to get back to you by email within 24 hours. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Christina now.
All right, thanks, Tanya. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. So like Tanya mentioned, this is going to be part one of a multi-part series just entirely devoted to ONYX. So for part one today, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're just going to look at the basics of how to set up the Revit project and the ONYX projects. So we're going to look at creating user accounts, creating a project. We'll look at the Upload Center and kind of work our way through the Revit toolbar, look at how to upload sections, and ultimately how to upload your panels into ONYX. So before we even start jumping into Revit, I'm just going to go ahead and switch directly to ONYX Web. So when you first download the ONYX Upload Center, comes in as a separate tab like this in your Revit toolbar, kind of like the previous CNC did. And the first button on the left side just gives you access to the website. So if you click on that, brings you directly to your ONYX webpage. So at this point, you'd log in just with the credentials that are given to you. And then you should have your overall ONYX dashboard. So you should see any kind of projects. There's also the users tab, the settings tab, the components, and the manufacturing center. And basically throughout these kind of webinars, we're going to go through every little detail in ONYX and work through it step by step. So this is the main projects view. First thing that you'll see when you log in. But one of the first things you're probably going to want to do is actually add more users to your account. So you can click on the users tab, and obviously when we give you the initial login, that's going to be an admin account. And admins will have access to create new users, to create new projects, and to assign users to those projects. So in the users tab, you'll be able to see everyone on this account. And if you did want to add in a new user, put in their information, and then they can take on one of the two roles. So they can be an account admin and have full access, or they can just be an account user. And the account user, the main difference really is that they're just basically having access to the projects that were assigned to them. So to give you guys an idea, these are kind of the main options for the admin account. If I just log out, and I'll use one of my secondary user roles, this is what the dashboard is going to look like for them. So they're only going to be able to see projects that they have access to that have been assigned to them. And that users tab is now gone. So they just don't have the ability to access the users on the account. And there's also a few secondary settings that they won't have access to as well. So those are kind of the main two functions. Probably the first thing, again, you'll want to set up is the actual users who are going to be on the account. So I'm going to log back in with my admin account. And of course, one of the other things that an admin account can do is actually add a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a new project. I'll just give it an arbitrary name. And then this is the actual project that the panels are going to be uploaded to. So on the actual projects themselves, few little options. You can, of course, delete it. There is kind of a safety net put in place to ensure that you don't delete anything accidentally. So you will have to put in the actual project name for it to be deleted. If ever it's an inactive project, it could always be archived. So that's again something else more on the admin user role. If it's not an active project anymore, it could always be sent to your archives. And the other thing as well, any admin account could also add users to that project. So you'd be able to go ahead and add in a new user. You could assign them roles at this point too if they are an admin, if they're able to download the CNC files or upload the panels. So a few functionalities that can be turned on or off depending on the user. So this is pretty much it in terms of adding a project, setting up your users. So those are the first two basics you'll probably want to get set up. But after that, a bit more of the meatier options, we can start setting up the CNC. So the first settings option, depending on the machine type that you guys are using, you'll be able to create the machine settings, and you could have multiple machine settings for any type of machine that you have. So if I go ahead and add in a new setting, in this case for Howick, you'll be able to modify all of the defaults. So this is really kind of an exact copy of the window that we had before in Revit when you'd go ahead and output to CNC. You can adjust all your punch widths, adjust your output operations. Same thing for Beck as well. If I go ahead and add in a new setting. So it's really just a matter of giving your settings a name. You can adjust the machine options. So nothing new here, all the same machine options. And then you can hit create and save those machine properties. So this is kind of one of the first primary differences. Instead of having to change the settings now as you're going along, they can be saved as a template, essentially. And you'll be able to link these to your member types. And that's exactly how the members are going to know which settings to use to output. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But the main thing here is this is where you can set up those machine CNC settings, and you can create as many as you need to. So once your machine settings are all set up, you could of course go back and edit them if you need to or delete them altogether. But once these guys here are set up, the next few little options in these settings First one, pretty simple, just the unit settings for ONYX. So how you want your lengths and your weights displayed. If you want to switch to metric and or imperial, just to generally save your unit settings. And then the next two will make a little bit more sense as we get into more of the webinars. So as we look at role orders and work orders. But the main settings here are just to show the increments that are being used and to show the last number that was used. So these will make more sense a little later down the line, but just to show your last used number. So that's essentially step number 3, getting your machine settings all set up. And then we can finally jump into the Revit side of things. So I'll just kind of work through the ribbon left to right a little bit. So we saw obviously the access to the website. The About button will just show you the version of the uploader that you're on. And then you've got the Upload Manager. So this guy here can be actually docked to your Revit ribbon. You'd hit the Connect button, log in, and then this is what's actually going to create the connection from your Revit project to your ONYX project. So I can go ahead and select that test one that I just created, say OK, and now it's linked to be uploaded to that test project. So the other main thing I just want to highlight at this point too, is that even though I'm kind of course, linking one Revit project to one ONYX project, you can link multiple Revit projects into one ONYX project. So they're not exclusive with each other. If you've got a really large building broken up over multiple Revit projects, they could all be uploaded to the same spot in ONYX, and the CNC files can all be produced from that one ONYX project. So that's just one thing to note. If it's broken up into multiple pieces, you can kind of piece it back together in ONYX. So now that we've got it set up for the test project, one more little thing before we actually go ahead and upload the panels. So one of the first things you're going to have to do when you're first getting started is actually uploading your sections. So the sections are basically just the families that you're using to model out your building. And it's essentially just assigning them a section shape. So ONYX knows exactly what type of shape that they are. So all of these are just C profiles with lips. So you can set that up. I'll go ahead and check that off and just hit upload. And occasionally, you maybe notice the version number on the side. If you did make any kind of changes to the family, if it's the exact same component, it'll just update the version, so you won't have duplicate components in ONYX. So it's basically just taking a few seconds, and it'll upload and assign those families. And once it's been updated, you'll be able to see all of the components here in the ONYX Components tab. So the other main thing to note at this point is that if you do reuse the same families, the same sizes over and over again, then once it's uploaded to ONYX, it's uploaded and you won't have to re-upload it for every single project. This is kind of a first step again to just make sure that all the components have the right shape and are uploaded. But once the family is uploaded, it's considered the same family across multiple projects. So these are all the ones that I've already had uploaded to ONYX. Any new components for any new project that you open up, if it doesn't exist in ONYX yet, that's where it populates in here. The other thing as well is that, of course, you're probably going to have families that you're not going to roll. So you're going to have flat straps, maybe some round bars. What you can do is that we just basically defaulted that it hasn't been defined. But in this case, if I were to, excuse me, if I were to label this as a flat strap, it just disappears from my components entirely since it's not something I'm going to roll. So we've got all of our components set up. You do the same thing with your sheathing. If you are using sheathing, something that I've already uploaded. And hardware as well is something that's coming, but it eventually will be able to be uploaded as well. So all of our components have been uploaded. And if you actually switch back and go to the ONYX web, you'll see here all of the families, basically all of your section shapes that have been uploaded. So the other thing is, again, this is across all ONYX projects. It's in your main window. It's not assigned to a specific project. So these sections are being considered all across ONYX. And the main use really for this, to kind of break it up by component, is that this is how you're able to assign the machine settings. So the ones that I've just uploaded are going to be labeled as unassigned. So I can select those members, pick my machine type, assign my machine setting. And those are the settings that are going to get used on this member type, regardless of what panel it's in. This size exactly will have those machine settings. So it's another little concept that we've kind of changed. Before you'd have the same machine settings across the panel. Now it's really just assigned to the component itself. So the other thing as well, of course, if you do have any sizes that you want to not roll, you could always assign them to not be rolled. And then the only other little thing that's probably worth mentioning in here as well, kind of the first view of the table layout. And you'll see this used in a lot of other spots. But the format for these columns is super customizable. So if you want to organize them, you can move the table around if you want to see the machine setting maybe a bit earlier. If there's ever any kind of column that you don't want to have active, or if you want to reactivate them, they could always be turned on and off. Any weights, obviously from the family, will be pulled here. So if the families do have weights, that is considered. And then you could always filter as well. So if I did just want a quick view of maybe just my members that were a certain type of gauge, I could always just put that in the filter. And last thing with these tables, if you do have it set up a specific way, you could always save that view, essentially save it as a template. And you could have different custom views just displaying different information. So just if you want to clean up your tables a bit, you're always able to save those views, and it'll automatically look like this every time you open up your component types. All right. So now that that step is done, we've uploaded all our component types. They have a machine setting. Now we're finally able to actually upload the panels. So just for time today, I'm just going to upload the panels on the first floor. And I actually do have some trusses in here as well, so let me turn those back on. Just had them hidden in here. Okay, so I really just want to upload what's in my view. So namely just some wall panels and a few of these floor trusses. So that's where the upload manager over here is going to come into play a little bit. You can of course just upload it by selection. So you can click around and grab the panels that you want to upload. They're all going to be listed here. You could of course run it by all the panels. So regardless of what view you're in, what you have selected, it's going to upload all the panels in the project. So in this case, a decent amount, all of my trusses, my walls and floor panels. But just for time today, I'm going to upload what's in my view. So it's got my wall panels, and then the trusses as well. Since there's no real concept of a truss panel, it basically just uploads each individual truss as its own assembly. So these are all just the individual truss names of all my floor trusses. So again, I'm just running this by view. So let's go ahead and actually upload those panels. And again, they're getting uploaded to that test project that I just created. So once everything's been uploaded, you'll get this little summary. So it'll just tell you the number of panels, in this case, 6 wall panels, 11 trusses. I can say okay. And then the other thing as well that it does on the Revit side is actually lock your panels. So the locking does basically two things. It's a nice visual marker to say that it's been uploaded. Your trusses, your walls, in this case, they're going to pop in as bright red. If you click on it, we overlay an object on top of the wall, just to say that it's actually been locked. So you'll be able to visually see that in the project. But the other thing as well that it does is that it prevents any kind of modifications from being done to these walls. So if I did try to grab a panel and regenerate it or delete it, the only thing that pops up really is just to say that it's locked. So I'd have to unlock it to run this command. So the locking is just a way to ensure that the panels are in their final stage. The only thing you can really do to a locked panel is create the shop drawings. But any kind of modifications, it will have to be unlocked. So of course, these guys could always be unlocked if you do have to make modifications to them. You can unlock them here in the settings dropdown in regular MWF. Go ahead and just unlock that panel and it'll go back to normal. You're able to access the properties, regenerate it, do whatever you have to do. And the other thing with a locked panel is that you can always view the status. So you'll be given just a history of the actions, the dates, the user who did it. And then in the case where it's automatically locked by uploading it to ONYX, it'll just autofill that comment automatically, so you know exactly why it was locked. So at this point, if you did make changes, you wanted to re-upload that panel back into ONYX. For a larger project, you might want to run it by selection just so it has less to filter through. But since I already have everything by view, I'm just going to tell it to re-upload. And you can see here that it did upload my one panel again, and it skipped everything else that was already locked. So it already saw those as uploaded, nothing else to do. So once the panels are uploaded, you can go back into your projects. We can go to the test file. And I'm just going to jump to the panel manager. And you'll be able to see everything listed in the manager. And it's broken up by wall panels, floor panels, trusses. So you'll be able to see everything in here. And obviously some of these options will come in into later webinars. We'll go through everything. But the main thing I just want to highlight for today is that everything will be listed in here, all of the panels. And you can also see which Revit project they belong to. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're uploading multiple Revit projects into one ONYX project, it's another filter that you can use to organize your panels. And again, all of these guys can be moved around like we saw before. And you can save that view as a template. So last few little options that I just want to bring up. Some of the other options that you can use to sort. We do have an option to assign an area to the wall panels. So if it hasn't been assigned, it'll just take a default area like I have here. But you could always go ahead and assign just by selecting your panels, and you can give them an area. So it's just another nice little filter to organize your wall panels in Onyx. If you want to organize them by floor, what have you. You can assign that area name to the panels, and it'll be reflected here in Onyx. The other pretty important parameter that you'll be able to use to filter out later on, if I go ahead and unlock this guy, there's an option here in the miscellaneous tab to set a category. So if your panels are interior, exterior, bearing, non-bearing, you can assign it that category. And this is also another filter that you're able to use in Onyx to organize your panels. And I mean, the last thing really for me today is just the delete button, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. But if you do want to delete the wall panels from your Onyx project, it's actually not done through Onyx, it's done directly in here. So you'll be able to select the panels. Again, there's a few different options to filter from. So if you just want to delete walls, if you want to delete your first floor walls in a specific area, you run the delete command, and it basically just removes those panels from Onyx. They're unlocked, they go back to being regenerable, and they're removed from your Onyx project entirely. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. If there's any questions at this point, feel free to go ahead and ask them now.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. I'd just like to remind everyone that if you would like to pose a question live, please raise your hand now by clicking on the hand icon in the control panel. Just please also make sure that your audio is working correctly. While we wait for any questions to come through, I'd just like to, again, remind everyone that the recording of the webinar will be sent through tomorrow. As always, please feel free to share the recording with any colleagues. And if you'd like to set up a one-on-one demo, we highly encourage you to reach out to our team. Contact details for our sales team will be provided with the recording tomorrow. All right, I'll just give it a couple of seconds. All right, it seems like it's a wrap for today. If there were any questions that were submitted that have not been answered to already, we'll make sure to get to them as soon as possible by email. Just one last thing, stay tuned for the recording mailer. We'll have a link for next week's webinar, which will be part 2 of our webinar series on Onyx. Once again, I just want to say thank you to Christina, and also thank you to everyone who registered for the webinar. All right, I'll now be ending the webinar. Thank you very much.